We are continuing our season previews, and today we're talking about the New Orleans Pelicans, the team that everybody's just itching to talk about. I actually am very excited about this. We're going to be helped by my good friend Will Guillory to untangle this mess of a rubber band ball that is the New Orleans Pelicans. Will, one, it's a delight to talk to you. Two, what's it been like this summer covering the Pelicans?
Man, first off, been way too long since me and you did a pod, man.
It has.
It's
way
been a
too
long summer. But always happy to be on with you. And I would say this was kind of my running joke when I was out at Summer League. Summer League is the home of NBA networking, where you go around and shake hands and kiss babies and introduce yourself to a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
And I would say the majority of my time in Vegas was spent introducing myself to people, informing them that I'm a Pelicans writer, and them going, "Oh God, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, man, it must be tough right now. You're going through a lot. I'm like, listen, nobody in my family died. Like, it's good. Like, it's fine. So that's pretty much the experience being a Pelicans writer right now. People react to you like you just have a tragedy going on in your life.
So let's talk about the offseason. What is the most impactful change? And you can't choose the year-long trade of Trajan Langdon for Troy Weaver. You can't do that one. But what was the most impactful thing that happened to the Pelicans this summer?
I mean, there's no doubt it's moving on from David Griffin, who ushered in a new era post Anthony Davis, made so many big changes with this team, some good, some bad, and then bringing in Joe Dumars, who's bringing in a new era. He's already made some massive changes this offseason. I don't know, you may have heard of a few that have been controversial in some circles, but Joe Dumars has made his presence felt. I think not just with the moves on the roster, but I think kind of culturally, he's already doing some things behind the scenes. I think, at the forefront is just his outward, wanting to kind of develop a relationship with Zion Williamson, and, hearing stories about him bringing Zion and them watching playoff games together during the NBA playoffs, them spending time together with Troy Weaver. I think he's really wanted to come in and make an impact on this team and make his presence felt in the front office. And we'll see how much of it works. Obviously, some of the stuff people are looking at as pretty crazy, as some of these moves he's made, but I think he's come in and really put his imprint on this team. And I think more than anything, he wants this team to be younger. He wants them to be more flexible. And I think he's kind of put himself in a position where they're hoping to win this year, but they have some pieces on the roster where they can build towards the future if things don't work out this season.
Yeah, one of those crazy moves was acquiring Derek Queen.
It's funny. Once you said one of those crazy moves, I had no idea where you were going next. There were several options.
Okay, rank the crazy moves of the offseason of this Joe Dumars, Troy Weaver era. Rank the crazy moves that you've seen from them.
No, I think number one has to be trading a future unprotected first-round pick to go get Derek Queen. And listen, there are a lot of people who love Derek Queen. There are a lot of people who hate Derek Queen. I still want to see. I'm one of those people who are waiting to pass judgment on Derek Queen. But for this team to be in the position they're in, trading an unprotected pick in the 2026 draft that a lot of people are in love with, especially the top, 3 or 5 guys in that draft, to give away that unprotected pick, knowing. I mean, we just saw the Dallas Mavericks go from the play-in tournament to the number 1 pick. So, the lottery is just so unpredictable these days. To give up an unprotected pick is wild. and I think probably right under that, you got to go to CJ McCollum for Jordan Poole trade, which, I don't necessarily hate. I can get where their thinking is. I think a lot of people are very anti-Jordan Poole based on his Washington Wizards experience. And, rightfully so. They did a whole lot of losing, and he was the face a lot of bad basketball with the Wizards, but I think he's still a talented player, and we'll see what he looks like in this situation. And let's go for the bronze medal. We could throw the Kevin Looney 2 years, $16 million deal in there, which again, I don't hate. But multiple years for Kevin Looney, who was struggling to break the rotation and go to State. Probably not something that a lot of people saw coming this summer.
Yeah. Yeah, they really made their imprint on the roster right away. And yeah, the unprotected pick is without a doubt the craziest one, because if it does end up being the 5th pick in the draft or the 6th pick in the draft, or if they somehow got the number 1 pick and Darren Peterson is now wearing a Hawks jersey, I mean, Pelicans fans are going to be up in arms, and they should be. They really should be. It kind of sucks for Derek Queen that he has to start his career like this, because he can't just be a normal player. He can't just be a normal rookie. He has that attached to him, which is no fault of his own. Like, he didn't choose this, but he will always be attached to that pick. Now, if it like New Orleans is somehow good and it's like the 20th pick, it doesn't really matter. But in all likelihood, we're talking about a lottery pick and a guy that could be better than him. And so it just kind of sucks for Derek Queen in general that he has to have that attached to him.
And one of the hilarious side plots in this is in his first press conference as a member of the Pelicans, Derek Queen came out and said, yeah, the Pelicans are right for making that trade because I'm better than all those dudes in a 2026 draft class. I played them in high school and I beat them when I was in high school. So one of the things I love about Derek Queen, doesn't hold his tongue for anybody. So we'll see how much that'll come back to bite him. But yeah, I think when you watch Derek Queen, it's obvious, a ton of talent. You can see why the Pelicans fell in love with him from a game standpoint and from a personality standpoint. Like I said, the guy is extremely confident. He walks in the building and people want to follow him, but he's still a very young player. He's still got a lot to learn. He's still got a lot of growing to do to find out how he fits in this league. And because of the position they put him in, just like you said, he doesn't have that time. They need to win now. He needs to look good immediately, or people are going to continue to rip this trade.
So looking at this roster, who's the player you think has a chance to take the biggest step forward?
I'm really, really excited to see what Trey Murphy can do this season.
Yeah.
I think among the league pass, neophytes, everybody kind of already loves Trey Murphy. We all know he's kind of the prototypical shoots a whole lot of threes, gets a whole lot of shots at the basket type of offensive player, fun personality on Twitter. But I think now he can really step into a guy who really can consistently score 20 points a game every season, be in that all-star conversation, be a guy who can really make plays consistently with the ball in his hands. I think we saw some of that last year. He had a career high in points last year. But a lot of that was, on a team that was out of it very early in the season. It was a whole lot of Trey Murphy ISOs while Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Lester Quinones watched along. So I think now, can he do this with Zion Williamson out there, with Jordan Poole out there, with Sadiq Bey, with some of these other talented players that they have on this roster? Because if he can, this team can be competitive. They can potentially be a playing team if you have Zion Williamson playing at a high level, if you have Trey Murphy playing at an all-star level. But I think they're going to need, especially those top two guys, to really step up in a major way. And, as we always say with the Pelicans, they got to be healthy. They got to be on the court. Trey Murphy missed a lot of time last year. Herb Jones missed a lot of time last year. We know the ongoing saga with Zion Williamson and those hamstrings. This team undoubtedly has talent, but they just need these guys to play. And I think a big part of that is Trey Murphy kind of stepping into that Brandon Ingram role now that B.I. has moved on to Toronto and really showing that he can be that second shot creator next to Zion.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of the perfect fit to do that because he does take a lot of threes. I mean, he took 8 threes a game last year. And if he's being asked to handle the ball a little bit less and shoot a little bit more, like, you could see that being 9 threes a game. He was 21 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists last year, which is great. But if he continues to up his 3-point production, which he has every year, I think that would be huge for the Pelicans. He's a great player. And for the Pelicans too, if you felt like you needed to reset, not that you'd really want to trade Trey Murphy, but you could get a lot for him if you're looking to just kind of reset and like be super young. Because he's entering his 5th year in the league. He's 25 years old already.
Just signed an amazing extension too. Already great value on that contract.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What I'm going to pull it up right here. Yeah. 25 million this year, 27 the next, 29 and 31. By the time you get to 2028, 29, 31 is going to look comical for a player.
Like mid-level exception, basically.
Yeah. That's no joke. Let's talk about Zion. What are the expectations for him this year? You talked about Joe Dumars, forming a relationship with him. It felt like early on, whenever Joe Dumars was hired, that they may possibly move on from Zion like relatively soon. It seems like that has quieted at this point. But what are the expectations for him moving into this year? It feels a little bit like a mystery box.
I feel like I've gone on this same spiel probably like 4 years in a row on a podcast with you, Andrew. But the pressure is higher than ever before on Zion Williamson this year. And I think, we've said this before, and I think a part of that has been attached to, hey, look at all this talent with the Pelicans. If they can get Zion Williamson, they could be so fun in the West. They could be a contender. We remember that December where they were the 1 seed in the West, and they had everything going with B.I. and Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado and all of these guys. And I think they were always waiting for Zion to be that guy who can lift them up to be a true contender in the West. And now, with a bunch of those guys going, I think that hope is basically out the window now. I don't think anybody's looking at them as a true contender in the West. But really, the pressure is on Zion Williamson to save this team from disaster, because it feels like if Zion has another year where he's playing 20, 30 games, they're going to crater. And we're going to be talking a whole lot about that first-round pick. We're going to be talking about teams coming in trying to poach Trey Murphy, trying to poach Herb Jones. So I think now more than ever, they need Zion Williamson to lift this team up to save them from basically having to go into a hard rebuild. I think they're trying to do a bit of a soft rebuild, like I said, with B.I. moving on, Najee Marshall, Dyson Daniels, some of these key figures in that playoff team that got swept against OKC a few years ago. And now they need Zion to step up, not just on the court, but off the court, I think, as a leader in the locker room, as a guy who's speaking up more often, as a guy who I mentioned before, the front office is trying to invest in. They're trying to put their arm around him and say, hey, this guy is the face of our franchise. He's going to be the leader. We're moving on from B.I. We're really investing in Zion. And obviously that sounds good, but they still have the flexibility to move on from Zion and potentially put him back in the trade talks next summer. But I think they really want him to be that guy. They want him to be the figure. And listen, we saw last year, I mean, not a whole lot of us saw, the like 12 of us who were watching the Pelicans in March and April last year. When Zion was healthy, he was incredible last year. It was the best basketball he's ever played when he was healthy last year. He was in incredible shape. The defense was at another level. He was seeing the court at a high level. I think if he can pick up where he left off last year, he's going to be right there in the All-NBA discussion. I think he's that talented. He was that good. And I think, hearing from what I've heard this summer, he's still got that same mentality as far as the work he's putting in, the attention he's putting to making sure he's in shape. But again, with Z, none of it matters unless he plays. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to keep those hamstrings in order. He's got to find a way to be on the court consistently, because if he can, all of these pieces come together. You see Trey Murphy in the right role. You see Herb Jones in the right role. You see Jordan Poole playing with more talent than he has since he was in Golden State. I think when you look at all of these pieces, it kind of makes sense what they're striving toward. But they're putting so much on Zion Williamson, and a guy who, frankly, just hasn't been very reliable as a number one option. And now they're relying on him more than ever, which I think is a dangerous place for this team.
Yeah. Well, what's your level of concern for him physically heading into the season, or what have you heard about how he's doing physically?
I mean, like I said, I think he's been in amazing shape. I think he's figured some things out as far as how to take care of his body, how to eat right. Mentally, I think he's in a good place. Obviously there's always a little bit of noise going on with him off the court, but I think he's kind of used to that now. And I think he's been very appreciative of how much Joe Dumars has embraced him. We've written before at The Athletic about how shaky that relationship has been at times between him and David Griffin. And I think while it did improve over time, I still don't think it was ever where it needed to be as far as a communication standpoint, as far as a fully trusting each other standpoint. And I think with Joe Dumars and Zion, they probably have more of a relatable background. I think those guys walk into a room and probably understand each other better than a David Griffin and a Zion Williamson would. So I think that's the hope there, as those guys can kind of establish something and build on that. But again, he's got to stay healthy. You can be in as good a shape as you want to. You can do all the push-ups and sit-ups, but if you're in street clothes when the games start, then none of it matters. And I think it's going to put pressure on all the rest of these guys to step up more than they need to. But if Z can be there, then I think you can see all of the pieces in this team click. And I think they can be a fun team to watch with Z there, because he's so talented. And I think, again, watching him play last year, he was incredible. I want people to go pull up Zion Williamson in his final game of last regular season against the Minnesota Timberwolves. That man literally won that game by himself against Anthony Edwards. The full Minnesota roster was out there. I think maybe Julius Randle was hurt, but he completely dominated that game. And then the Pelicans basically left the arena and said, hey, we need Zion Williamson to stop winning games for us because we're trying to get Cooper Flag. So they immediately shut him down after that game. But go pull up him in Minnesota last year, and you can see what I'm talking about, just how dominant he can be when he's healthy.
We mentioned Derek Queen earlier, but they picked Jeremiah Fears earlier in the draft. What are your thoughts on Fears and what kind of role he could have on this team?
When I tell you they love Jeremiah Fears, they love that kid. And when I say a kid, I think that's the one thing with him. He's still very young.
He's still 18, right?
Still 18 years old. I think he turns 19 maybe in September or something like that.
I'm looking at it now, October 14th.
October 14th. So, yeah, he's still a very young kid, still got a lot of growing to do. But the attitude he brings to the gym, I think they really are excited about. Everybody kind of makes the zero fears joke. But he kind of embodies that. He plays such a fearless brand of basketball, is able to get to the rim consistently. This team has been desperately looking for a point guard for so long, basically since Chris Paul left the building. They've been looking for a point guard, and I think they really wanted to invest in one this year, especially where they were in the draft. There were so many good guards in that range, and I think they feel very fortunate that Jeremiah Fears fell to them the way he did. Now we're going to have to see, how much he can actually play. They've got Jordan Poole, they've got Jose Alvarado, they've got Dejounte Murray coming off of the Achilles injury. So we'll see how much he can really factor into the rotation. But they're huge believers in what this guy can be going into the future, how he can kind of be the floor general for them moving forward, and how they can kind of develop him very early in his career at a young age, kind of show him the way, have him be around some of these vet guys. And I think they're really excited about what he can be. And he has some ups and downs in summer league. I think he had a real aversion for passing the ball at certain times. There was that one game against the Lakers. I believe they had 0 assists in the second half, where Jeremiah Fears played a whole lot of that second half. I think, if you're going to be a good point guard in this league, you might have to pass it a few times. But I think this kid has a really bright future, and he's still. I've talked to a couple people close to him during the offseason, and I think they've said even during summer league they saw him doing things that he wasn't doing at Oklahoma. And that's the exciting thing, that he's still got so much room to grow in his game because he's so young, and getting the opportunity to play under some of these vet guys, I think is going to be a really good experience for him. And I think it's going to be good for him that he's not going to get thrown in the fire early on. I think it's going to be a beneficial for him to learn on the bench, to kind of play some of those stay fit games, maybe even spend a little time in the G League. And I think once they finally unleash him, I think he's going to be a really good piece on this team. You
mentioned Dejounte. What's the expectation for him? Do you expect to see him in uniform at all this year?
I think so. I mean, he tore his Achilles last year, end of January. I think I would bet that he's more likely to come back post New Year versus before the New Year. But I think, if you follow him on social media, he's been posting a lot about the work he's putting in on a daily basis. He's really attacked this rehab head on. I think he's in a much better mental space than he was last year. I think if you weren't following the Pelicans it was hard to grasp just how much Dejounte Murray was going through last year. His mother had a stroke right before the start of the season, got traded. He came in and broke his hand his very first game as a member of the Pelicans. Yep. He's talked in interviews this summer about, losing a few people close to him, and, obviously coming back, dealing with the Achilles. So I think he went through a lot last year mentally, physically, wasn't necessarily happy in New Orleans at times. But I think now he's in a much better place. Joe Dumars has been active again with Dejounte Murray, bringing him in, kind of utilizing him as a mentor for some of these young guys. So I think he's really excited about attacking this rehab. But again, I mean, they went out and got Jordan Poole for a reason. They believe that it's going to be a while before Murray comes back. And again, with these guys coming off Achilles, who knows what they're going to look like once they're back. He might be playing in January, but is he going to be Dejounte Murray in January? Or will it take until the following season before we actually see it? And if last year, Dejounte Murray wasn't very good, when he was playing with the Pelicans. I think part of that was some of the mental stuff he was going through, but I think he's got to figure out his fit, next to Trey Murphy, next to Zion Williamson, especially if they're going to be, putting the ball more in some of these other guys' hands versus allowing Dejounte to be a pure point guard that he kind of envisions himself to be. So I think there are a lot of questions about his fit, his future. But I think it's been good to see him in a much better mental place than where he was last season. Because I think last year, I think he'll probably admit it was probably the worst year of his career, just from everything he dealt with on and off the court.
Yeah, no, it's good to bring up just the mental side of it, because at times, as like an observer of the game, you can forget like these are just people, like everybody goes through, parts of life that just completely just take your feet out from under you. And it sounds like that's just kind of what he went through mentally and physically. It's a shame that he had to go through that, but if he can come out the other side mentally stronger and like feeling good, like, people forget Dejounte Murray is a really good basketball player and an impactful basketball player in this league. So I think that's
a strong
an
personality, right? They need that in that locker room. They need a strong personality. They need some leadership, especially with CJ McCollum leaving the building. So that's what I think they really want from him, is that personality, that voice in the locker room, especially as Zion is learning how to step into that role more.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, a couple more questions. What's the biggest swing factor for this team? Like, I think it's easy to say like games played for Zion is probably like the biggest swing factor for them. But like, whenever you think about that, what are other things that come to mind other than just like Zion Williamson playing basketball?
Does this team have two playable centers? I think it's going to be a real question. Yves Missi was a young guy they were really excited about last year, played a ton of minutes as a rookie. I think had some really bright spots. But this team was also bottom 5 in rebounding last year, with Yves Missi playing a ton of minutes at the center position. And they kind of made a decision late in the season that, hey, we're better off playing double big lineups with Yves Missi and Kelly Olynyk. And I think part of that was Yves Missi struggled at times with rebounding, especially on a defensive end. How much is he going to be able to step into that role, be a guy they can trust at the center position, be a guy who can rebound, defend, be a complementary piece? And then once Yves Missi goes to the bench, who are they going to be able to trust? Is it going to be Kevin Looney? Is Kevin Looney going to be playing more than he has in years for this team? It feels like Kevin Looney's like 42, but he's still not even 30 yet. I think he might be 30 on the dot. So he's still a relatively young player just from an age standpoint, but obviously he's got a ton of miles under his belt. Can they utilize him? How much can they play Derek Queen as a backup center? I think that'll be a big question. He really struggled at times in summer league with defense and rebounding. They've got, Carlo Makovich, who's a guy that not a lot of people know, but he's a very talented big, kind of undersized at the center position. So we'll see how much they use him, 4 or 5. But I think that's a big question for this team. Do they have enough bigs to be functional? And I think in today's NBA, we're going to see more and more teams lean into these double big lineups. We talk about, Houston having Capella, Şengün, Steven Adams, Memphis having Jaren Jackson, Zach Edey. We saw, Minnesota obviously leaning into their big lineups with Julius Randle, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. I think so many teams, obviously the defending champs with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. I think more teams are going to play big, stay big. They're going to say, we've got bigs who are versatile. We've got bigs who can defend in multiple ways. And you got to be able to match up with that. And I think they want to trend more towards Zion Williamson as a perimeter player versus a post guy who's going to be defending some of these bigs. And if that's the case, you're going to be leaning even more on some of these younger bigs they got on their bench, or even Misi in the starting lineup, and how much can these guys step into those roles and be productive? And if not, where can you find that production? Or they're going to have to look outside the building to get bigs who can give them consistent minutes. I think that's going to be a huge question for this team, because they were so bad rebounding last year and they were so rough defensively, especially after Herb Jones went down. I think that's going to be a huge question for them.
Yeah. Kevon Looney, he does seem old. Like if you were to poll NBA fans, like how old do you think he is? Probably 35, 36, he's 29.
Yeah.
Turns 30 in February. Also, fun fact, Nick Young is his cousin. I didn't realize that.
Shout out to the Swaggy family.
Shout out to the Swaggy family. Okay, last question. What's the most realistic outcome for the Pelicans this season?
I think most realistic is probably not making the playoffs. I don't think they'll be like one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league, like some people are predicting. I think even if Zion gets hurt, I think they got some talent on the roster where they'll be relatively competitive, and they'll obviously have motivation to not tank toward the end of the season the way they did last year. So I think that I can see them being around that 35 to 40 win range. Maybe be competing for the play-in if Zion's healthy. But I think, in previous years, they had hopes of being a 50-win team. I find a hard time believing that's a realistic possibility, seeing, just how tough the West is this year. But I do think that they've got talent on this team, that they can be dangerous if all the pieces come together. But it's just hard to bet with this team that everything's going to work out, because nothing ever works out with this team. So I think, if everything goes great, they'll look pretty good. But if history repeats itself, nothing will go right with this team. They'll be hurt again, and I think we're going to be facing some major questions with this team as far as Zion's future, as far as Trey Murphy's future. Willie Green, we haven't mentioned him yet. How are they going to factor in his future as a head coach? I think there are going to be some major questions for this team if they can't figure it out this year, and some major criticisms for Joe Dumars if they end up giving up a top 5 pick potentially, which, they're hopeful that won't be the case, but it certainly is a possibility, which you don't want to be a position you don't want to be in as you begin a rebuild, is giving up a top 5 pick or even a top 10 pick. So we'll see where it goes.
Go read Will Guillory at The Athletic all year long on the Pelicans. They will surely be interesting. I will say that. We know that they'll be interesting. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll talk to you guys again next time.